The Syrian Civil War, which began in 2011, is a chilling example of how interconnected global issues, climate change, authoritarianism, and migration, can fuel far-reaching political shifts. Years of severe drought from 2006 to 2010, exacerbated by climate change, devastated Syria's agricultural regions, forcing rural communities into urban centers and stoking widespread unrest. This environmental crisis collided with the authoritarian repression of Bashar al-Assad's regime, igniting a brutal conflict that displaced over 14 million people. Among those fleeing, 7.2 million crossed borders, sparking a refugee crisis that reshaped political dynamics in Europe, the United States, and beyond. The consequences were profound. Refugees, many embarking on perilous journeys across deserts and seas, faced not only physical dangers but also growing hostility in the nations they sought to reach. For Aliyah, a 7-year-old girl from Aleppo, the war meant leaving everything behind as her family fled to Lebanon after their home was destroyed. Stories like Aliyah's humanized the scale of displacement but also became symbols manipulated by opportunistic leaders to stoke fear and division. In Europe, the arrival of refugees ignited fierce debates over identity, security, and sovereignty. Nigel Farage, leader of the UK Independence Party, turned these fears into a powerful political weapon during the Brexit campaign. His infamous Breaking Point poster depicted long lines of refugees with the warning that immigration was out of control. Farage framed leaving the European Union as the only way to take back control of Britain's borders, and his rhetoric resonated with voters worried about cultural change and economic insecurity. Immigration concerns became a central theme of the 2016 Brexit referendum, leading to the UK's withdrawal from the EU and fracturing European unity. Meanwhile, in Hungary, Prime Minister Viktor Orbán declared a state of emergency, constructing razor-wire fences along Hungary's southern borders to block refugees. Orbán portrayed his actions as defending Hungary's Christian heritage against an invasion, using fear of migration to consolidate his power and challenge EU policies. This strategy echoed far-right rhetoric across the continent. Marine Le Pen in France claimed refugees threatened French identity, while Matteo Salvini in Italy blocked rescue ships carrying migrants, leaving desperate people stranded at sea. These leaders framed refugees not as victims of war but as invaders, weaponizing fear to gain electoral support. The crisis reverberated across the Atlantic, where it became central to Donald Trump's 2016 presidential campaign. While Syrian refugees made up only a small fraction of U.S. immigration, Trump amplified fears of terrorism and cultural displacement. His call for a Muslim ban and his pledge to build a border wall drew directly from the anti-immigrant sentiments spreading across Europe. Like his European counterparts, Trump offered simplistic solutions to complex problems, tapping into discontent rooted in economic inequality and a sense of cultural unease. This rise of right-wing populism was not solely a response to migration, but a reflection of deeper socio-economic grievances. The 2008 global financial crisis left many in Europe and the U.S. struggling with stagnant wages, unemployment, and growing inequality. Populist leaders exploited these frustrations, presenting refugees as scapegoats for systemic problems. They claimed elites prioritized migrants over citizens, positioning themselves as champions of the common man, while deflecting attention from the structural causes of economic stagnation. Adding to the turmoil, Russia leveraged the refugee crisis to weaken Western alliances. The Kremlin provided financial support to far-right parties like Marine Le Pen's National Rally in France and Matteo Salvini's Lega in Italy, while deploying disinformation campaigns to amplify fears about immigration. Russian media portrayed Europe as chaotic and overwhelmed, using migration to deepen divisions within the EU and erode NATO's cohesion. For Moscow, the crisis was an opportunity to destabilize its geopolitical rivals and promote nationalist agendas aligned with its interests. The long-term consequences of these developments are significant. In the UK, Brexit has led to economic challenges, including a decline in trade and GDP, while straining relations with European neighbors. Across Europe, immigration policies have become more restrictive, reflecting the populist rhetoric that reshaped public discourse. Centrist parties have struggled to counter the rise of far-right movements, leaving democratic institutions increasingly vulnerable to authoritarian pressures. At the heart of this story are the refugees themselves. Millions remain displaced, living in overcrowded camps or attempting to rebuild their lives in foreign lands. Their plight often fades from headlines, but their experiences, families crossing barbed wire borders, children separated from their parents, and communities torn apart, serve as a stark reminder of the human cost of war and political opportunism. The Syrian Civil War and its aftermath reveal the fragility of our interconnected world. Environmental pressures like climate change, combined with authoritarian repression and war, can set off chains of events that reshape political landscapes far beyond their origins. What began as a drought in Syria evolved into a conflict that altered the global political fabric, fueling nationalism and populism in ways that continue to define the present. This cautionary tale underscores the urgent need for nuanced, cooperative approaches to address the root causes of crises, from climate change to migration. Only by tackling these challenges holistically can we hope to prevent history from repeating itself. Please subscribe to the Intellectualist's new YouTube channel, where we present insightful videos analyzing the current events shaping the world. Turn on notifications to receive the latest updates from the channel.